Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to today's Dallas Job Seekers Club. We're going to be talking with Allison and Kristen from Jewish Family Service of Greater Dallas about the unemployed brain. So if you guys are ready, we can go ahead and start.
Thank you very much, Daisy. Change isn't easy. We all know that. Have any of you thought during the course of your day and during this career transition, I don't know how to do that? Or I'm going to look stupid if I say that. Or I've got this all wrong. Look around. All the people you're looking at have at one time or another had the same thoughts, including me. Many of us have experienced change throughout our lives. Some have been very positive experiences, like your acceptance to college, or completing a marathon or a 5K race, or getting a raise at work. But some are not so positive. Divorce, car accident, loss of a job. Accepting a good change is something we like to share and talk about. But going through a negative change is like climbing a mountain for the first time. The most important thing to remember is that this feeling is temporary. No, really, it is temporary. For the moment, it's monumental, and no one can take that away from the person it's happening to. So those expressions like, oh, it's okay, this too will pass, or it's not so bad, or just get over it are not comforting phrases. Other people don't know what you're feeling. And you have to process this change in your own way. For today, we're going to talk about the process of change and your brain. By doing this, we're hoping you understand how change affects you, and at your pace, you'll be able to recognize what's happening and improve the circumstances surrounding your daily life. The goal is to help you be more content and learn to navigate while you're going through this challenging career transition. Our brains crave certainty, predictability, and a need for control. But life throws us a curveball that doesn't make that always available to us. Change often occurs in predictable circumstances. For example, change can happen when there's a crisis. You're driving down the tollway and you're in a car accident. It happens by chance. You go out to dinner with friends and you lose your wallet with everything in it. Or by choice, your apartment building is being turned into condos and you have to move across town because you can't afford to buy it. Or by progress, you love your job, but technology enables your workplace to downsize and you lose that job. How we manage these changes is important to understand so we can help ourselves improve our daily lives. To start, we're going to talk in simple terms about our brain, which is actually made up of three brains. I know, really, three brains. The first brain is the primal brain, the second, the mammalian, and the third, the complex. The primal brain, the first one, works on your survival instincts. Some examples would be washing your hands frequently or using hand sanitizer during COVID. A couple other survival instincts are food, sleep, and protection. Next is our second brain, the mammalian brain, which works on emotion and learning, like motivation, creativity, problem solving, staying alert, and creating processes for yourself. So an example would be that you sit down on the 15th and 30th of every month to pay your bills. You've created a process that keeps you alert and solves a problem of not having late payments. Your mammalian brain is working. And then third, we have the complex brain, which helps process through experience. The complex brain includes memory and feelings and understanding and change. So an example is your company, where you've been successful for 12 years, outsources your position and you're laid off. The complex brain processes that experience and says, that job is no longer viable for me. What skills do I have and can take into a new industry? The process is starting to work. So now you might be asking yourself, what does your brain have to do with change? Great question. Well, all three parts of the brain must be in sync to adapt and accept change. If any of those brain functions are not working properly and talking to each other, then you have difficulty accepting that change is happening and how you could adapt to it. You have between 86 and 100 billion neurons in your brain. Neurons are information messengers. They use electronic impulses and chemical signals to transmit information between different areas of the brain. So the basic functions of a neuron are to receive signals, integrate those incoming signals to determine how to use the information, and communicate signals to target cells to be able to understand and manage all that information. Sounds complex, doesn't it? But it's not. When all is well in the world, these neurons travel safely through the brain like a marching band, following step by step. And when that is occurring, you process everything easily. But when there are major changes in your life, these neurons begin running into other things in the brain and they start getting out of sync and misfiring. You often know when this is happening when it's difficult to make the smallest of decisions, something you've done 1,000 times before. So for example, you go to the grocery store to buy a package of chicken. You look in the counter and you cannot decide what to buy. Should I get the chicken breast or the thighs or the drumstick or the cut up chicken? You've made this decision many, many times before, but can't do it now. It may take you 5 minutes to select a package of chicken, where before you would walk up to the counter, grab it, and walk away. Or you're in an interview. You've researched and practiced the answers to all the interview questions. You've worked with your coach. You're asked, so tell me about yourself. And your mind goes blank. Why? Because all the cylinders of your brain are not functioning in unison. Those wild little neurons are all mixed up and not traveling around the way they're supposed to. And the interesting thing with change, we all have to learn how to accept it. Now, we don't have to always like the change, but accepting it is the road to healing and feeling better about ourselves and what's going on around us. So just to review a couple of things, change is really hard, but you can accept change, good or bad, by understanding how your brain works. Number two, no matter what the change is, again, good or bad, there's always going to be a sense of loss. For example, you move into a new, bigger, nicer house or apartment. The brain says, the old place was fine and we had a lot of fun there. We then start using our survival logic to process through the change. Number three, adjustment to change takes time. We can't flick a switch and say, hey, everything's great. The brain just doesn't work that way. We need to help the brain make the transition from then to now. We need to take control and make the journey of acceptance. And finally, there's no exact time when acceptance will happen. What might take me a couple of weeks to accept may take someone else months. Everyone is different, but I think if you understand how the brain thinks, it might help you transition to acceptance, a step in the right direction to help you with change. Kristen is going to take you deeper into your thinking and help you cope with adapting to that change. Kristen?
Thanks, Allison. As you've heard, when the brain is all together, when the brain is in sync, then we adapt and change readily. This is an example of the brain that we call it the band being back together. But what happens in your job search? In your job search, there are so many different variables. What happens when change doesn't go away? when everything you do continues to change and change and change. Take a look at our brain again. This is the unemployed brain. They look like a bunch of ants trying to bang into each other. There's interview stress. Getting ready for the interview alone is stressful. The waiting game. Why haven't they called me back? Rejection. Why am I getting letter after letter from employers saying that they don't want me? The unemployed brain is constantly dealing with overwhelming changes. So what do? We're going to talk about how thoughts and feelings become behaviors when it comes to the unemployed brain. Over time, the unemployed brain can start to impact how we show up in life and also how we show up in an interview or with our future employer. For instance, if we're starting to feel frustrated, we can sometimes have thoughts like, I'm a victim. This isn't working out for me. And for some people, that can translate into behaviors like, I'm so tired. We call that lethargy. I just can't get out of bed. I can't do what I usually want to do. Feelings of I'm scared. There are money concerns here, right? I'm not getting a paycheck, or I don't know when my unemployment's going to run out. In that case, I will never, maybe thoughts are, I will never be able to get through this. I will never be able to get a good paying job again. Sometimes when we start to feel feelings like I will never, we start to have defiance. So I'm going to fight this. I'm going to lash out. My behaviors may not be very positive. Speaking of positive behaviors, sometimes when we really think about our feelings and thoughts, we know that positive behaviors or positive feelings and thoughts can produce positive behaviors. For instance, maybe at the beginning of your job search, you felt really open and optimistic, and you thought to yourself, I can do this. I want to do this. This is awesome. And when you're feeling positive feelings and thoughts, then your behavior will be one of cooperation. I can go to that interview when they need me to be there. This is all working out for me. I'm feeling better about myself. I'm learning about myself, and I feel creative. How do we transition from the feelings and the thoughts that can sometimes produce negative behaviors into feelings and thoughts that can produce positive behavior? We want to introduce you to two strategies. The first is self-awareness. Self-awareness is the conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. A shortcut of that is having knowledge of knowledge. So if you're typically in a situation where you're, you know that maybe you're going to yell if you're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're in traffic and you yell, you hear it coming out of your voice. That's knowledge of knowledge. I know that this is one of my typical reactions or my behaviors to stress. On the other hand, there's mindfulness. Mindfulness is the opportunity to observe our thoughts and emotions as separate from us, but simultaneously a part of us. So it's almost like you're a third person looking down on the situation. And the shortcut for this is thinking about our thinking in the moment. So self-awareness is a general knowledge of how we behave, our feelings, our desires, our character, knowledge of knowledge. But mindfulness is being in the moment with those thoughts and feelings and recognizing or observing that something is going to transpire as a result of our knowledge of knowledge. Now, before we move forward, one thing I really want to make clear is that self-awareness and mindfulness are a judgment-free zone. We always have to remind ourselves that these thoughts and these feelings are not good or bad. They just are. Most of us are a combination of our whole lifetime of experiences. So when things come out, our character, things that come out of our feelings, or when we're stopping ourselves to think about our thinking, it just is. There's no judgment necessary. So I want to go through a couple of examples with you. For instance, let's put ourselves in a real job situation. And I always use tollway examples because I drive the tollway every day. So you're driving to a job interview and you get cut off on the tollway, almost causing an accident, and it really scares you. Like you're shooken up, right? You're almost veered off, and now all of a sudden you're all discombobulated. So self-awareness, or our knowledge of knowledge, is sometimes I give up when things get really hard, or maybe you might avoid doing things when you're feeling really challenged. I use this a lot in financial coaching. I will call out some of our clients because I'll say, this is the moment you want to close your laptop and put it under the rug, right? And that does happen. People can be avoiding situations because they're stressed or scared. So when we go into our mindfulness example, again, we're thinking about our thinking. You immediately observe or notice yourself wanting to turn around and go home. You're not sure you can pull yourself together. You notice your thinking and you feel no self-judgment. This gives you a chance to reframe. You want this job. You're excited about this job. You're not going to turn back. You know you can do this. I'm going to stop for a second and remind you, this is not a positivity exercise. We're not saying, let's put flowers on everything, give ourselves some affirmations, and all will be well. We actually have a lot of studies that show that that doesn't necessarily work for people, but being mindful of ourselves, being mindful and having knowledge of knowledge can be really beneficial. Let's look at another situation. You're on Indeed. And I use this situation because as career coaches and financial coaches, we hear this one a lot. So you're on Indeed and you see 3 to 4 jobs that look really good to you. And as you're sitting there deciding whether you should apply for them, you realize, I just got 2 rejection letters from 2 other employers, and those were jobs I really wanted. Why would I want to apply for this job? This is silly. I know I'm not going to get it. I will never get these jobs. What's the use? So right there, we hear our thoughts and our feelings. I'm afraid. I feel defeated. Feelings. I can't. I won't. I will never. Thoughts. All of a sudden, we notice this, and we look at our self-awareness, knowledge of knowledge. Sometimes I can get distracted or run away when I'm upset or I feel defeated. So sometimes I avoid the situation altogether. Again, self-awareness, knowledge of knowledge. But now we're being mindful. We notice our thinking. You immediately observe or notice yourself wanting to shut down the computer and not apply. You notice the feeling of wanting to walk away. You observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment. This helps you access your complex brain, like Allison said, the reasoning part of the brain, and acknowledge that you are qualified and capable. You take action and you apply for those jobs. So, how do you get there? That's sometimes the magic question, right? Where do I go for support? How do I learn about myself? How do I stop myself in thinking about thinking? There's a couple of different ways and strategies that you can use to understand more about yourself. First of all, ask people who know you. Maybe even go through some old performance appraisals or talk to old bosses. Talk to a really good friend. Hey, how do I usually act? Like, what would you say my desires or motivations are? You know, we also talk about doing a lot of soul searching, journaling. Write down when you start to notice things about your values or your motives. Put it in your phone if you have to. You don't have to go buy a journal and write it down. You can just jot it in the notes part of your phone, things that you're becoming aware of. Talk to a career coach. At JFS, we have one-on-one career coaching. You can talk through some of these things with your career coach. Stay open to feedback. Thinking about some feedback maybe that you've gotten in the past is sometimes a good way to look into what's going on inside in some of your recurrent behaviors. What about mindfulness? How do you actually stop yourself in thinking about thinking? We also call this in psychology becoming a good self-monitor. Again, talk to a career coach. Practicing some of these situations, whether it's a job interview or working through a job application, can be really beneficial, because when you're talking to a trusted advisor, you can notice some of the common thought patterns that you have, and you can stop yourself and practice in the future when you're actually in those real situations. Participate in a group. Networking groups like we have at JFS, and Dallas Public Library has a lot of groups offered as well. Those can really help you be in a safe environment. And as you're participating, thinking about your thinking. How am I responding? What are some of these things that I want to say? Should I say them? Groups are great for that. Call a friend for support. Maybe you're thinking, I want to back out of this, or I'm too afraid to go forward with that job interview. Call a friend, talk to your friends about your thinking. Let them bounce some ideas off of you as well. And again, for this as well, it's journaling. Jot down in your phone whenever you can things that are coming up for you on a regular basis. I want to stress again, this won't work if you're judging yourself. If you're beating yourself up for the things that you think or feel, or if you're beating yourself up for what you're noticing that you're thinking about, you'll never be able to move forward. Everybody has thoughts and feelings, and sometimes they're great and positive and they promote wonderful things. Sometimes they're scary and they're negative, but that's okay. They are what they are. It's not something that we should be judging ourselves about. I'm bringing up the energetic self-perception chart. This is a chart that sometimes I use with my clients, and you can get this on the internet, and it comes in any variety. Sometimes it looks like a sphere, sometimes it's a simple chart like this. But what's kind of neat about the self-perception chart is it gives you some thoughts and feelings, and the actions are typically our behaviors. So when I have folks who are having a hard time linking in with their thoughts and behaviors and how they're connected, their thoughts and feelings and how they're connected to their behaviors, I use this chart. It's a great way. You can even just print it off and keep it in your car when you're starting to notice certain things like anger that could build into defiance. It's a good way to be mindful, to immediately start thinking about your thinking. Last but not least, let's go back and review everything that we've talked about today. First of all, change happens. It's going to happen. Our brains respond, and then the neurons reorganize because they're starting to process all of this new information. Because of that, sometimes data gets lost. We forget things. We feel a little discombobulated. We're not exactly sure where we are. But then acceptance begins. What happens when change doesn't end? We learn about our thoughts and feelings. We start incorporating that knowledge into how we're actually behaving and how that impacts our behaviors. We're going to adapt using self-awareness and mindfulness. And then the band marches on. Here's some tools and resources that might benefit you as you're going through and researching more about how self-awareness and mindfulness can help impact you in your job search mode. There's the energetic self-perception chart. You can get that on Google. Mindful.org and mindtools.com, the Job Seeker's Guide to Mindfulness on flexjobs.com. Again, you can just Google any of these topics and you will find pages and pages and pages of information. Self-awareness, positivepsychology.com, raisingselfawareness.com, what is self-awareness and how to increase yours on Indeed. Also, Indeed and LinkedIn both have some great articles about self-awareness and mindfulness. That's our presentation for today. If you'd like to get connected to a JFS career coach or financial coach, you can call us at 972-437-9950, extension 340. Allison, is there anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I just want everyone to be aware, change is going to continue. It is not going to stop. And if you're having challenges, call us. It's one of those things that causes stress. If you're in a job and something happens, it can cause you to lose a job. So don't be afraid to handle your change. That's it. Daisy?
That was awesome. Thank y'all. I think it is really important that we talk about, the effects of job searching and mental health, especially in times like these. And I know we can easily fall into the trap of equating whether or not we get the job offer into our self-worth. But it's really important to like separate the two and maybe put some distance between, the job search and your mental health, like finding ways to be kind to yourself and being able to step away and kind of do some self-healing and things like that. So these are some really good, I think this is a really good starting place for people, especially now.
Thank you.
I love what you said, Daisy, about putting distance between the two. Very accurately phrased, yes.
I think that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys for presenting. Is there anything else that we wanted to talk about? Okay, Matthew, if you could stop recording.